Chapter 342 to 344. After flying all the way to Angkor Van Tian for a few hours, Kuroto temporarily placed Gaara in an empty room and said, "Get comfortable here, kid. I have to leave for a while because of some things. In the meantime, I will be sending someone here. She will be the one to place the new seal." Gaara nodded and silently sat in the room while Kuroto left. With him now left alone, Gaara had some time to process all the events that have happened since Yashimaru's death. On the other side, after Kuroto left, he went to his laboratory room and used Tenseigan's soul descend to transfer his soul into the Tsukihai clone. Kuroto does not have any plans to reveal all the abilities to Shikaku, who knows if he can communicate with other Bijou, so unless the Tori seal is placed on Shikaku all the abilities of Tenseigan will not be revealed. With the soul transferred, Tsukihai made some preparations and then went back to the room Gaara was in. Tsukihai looked at Gaara's thoughtful look and said, "So you are the one Kuroto-sama mentioned?" Broken out of his thought, Gaara looked at the opposite Wani-san and asked, "You are?" Tsukihai smiled, "I am Uchiha Tsukihai, you can call me whatever you feel like, and I will be the one to change the seal of Bijou sealed within you." Gaara asked, "Can you really do that?" Tsukihai smirked and directly activated her eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. "How about I show you?" Gaara was shocked. "Those eyes are similar, yet different to the ones that the other person who was with him had. Your eyes? They are similar to the other one." Tsukihai nodded, You are probably talking about Shui. The ones he has are called Manjikyu Sharingan, dojutsu that only the people of the Uchiha clan can have, few exceptions aside. My eyes are a bit different, but anyway, let's get started as I don't really have much time." Without waiting for Gaara to react, Tsukihai entered into Gaara's subconscious plane. Tsukihai of course made sure to cast a genjutsu over the soul body in order to not give away the obvious identity. The purpose of using Tsukihai clone is simple, that is to not reveal all the abilities of Tenseigan to Shikaku. Anyway, after entering Gaara's subconscious plane, Tsukihai looked around. She wasn't much surprised with the state of Gaara's subconscious plane. After all, the seal placed on him earlier was too to actually seal a bijou safely. Compared to what was shown about Uzumaki Naruto's subconscious plane, Gaara's subconscious plane is much worse. It seemed to begin at a cave filled with thorns and pointed stones all around. Tsukihai curiously watched everything, purple vines, walls filled with holes, sand all around, and whatnot. Overall, it wasn't a pleasant sight to behold. Subconscious plane is the clear indication of one's mental state. This devastated plane showcases Gaara's devastated psychological state. It might take quite a while to heal the kid of these psychological wounds. Perhaps a friend can help, mused Tsukihai. After some time of walking, she finally came to the middle of the cave where the main part of the mental plane exists. The main plane was further divided into two caves. Tsukihai does not yet know what's inside of the first cave, but she can see the young figure of Gaara curiously looking at the inside of the other cave, which means that Shikaku is sealed there. This other cave is obviously noisy, because it houses none other than Shikaku, and Tanuki's continuous shouts even made Tsukihai feel annoyed. Tsukihai walked towards Gaara, and said, "You want to look at the state of Shikaku, right? Come on, follow me. As long as I am here, the Ichibi wouldn't be able to do you anything." Leaving this sentence, she did not wait for Gaara's response and continued walking forward. Gaara seemed to have some hesitation. If it were up to him, he would rather always stay away from Ichibi, but upon looking at the confident expression of her, he somehow summoned up the courage and followed her silently. Upon walking inside, the two finally got the sight of Shikaku. The Tanuki was restricted within this cave as there were specific seals designed at the entrance of the cave that restricted Shikaku to come outside, and being restricted here was obviously unacceptable to him, so he kept shouting and raging out loud. Perceiving the arrival of intruders, he roared and rushed over towards Tsukihai and Gaara. As he moved, the entire cave shook, and dust rose. Compared to the huge size of Shikaku, the Tsukihai figure was too small, yet there was no sign of fear within her eyes. She looked at the incoming Tanuki condescendingly. Shikaku noticed Tsukihai's eyes, and his tail immediately rushed towards Tsukihai as he shouted, "I am so gonna kill you, Uchiha." The immensely large tail of Shikaku fiercely rushed towards Tsukihai and Gaara. But Tsukihai's face remained unchanged. She weaved hand signs at an extremely fast speed, and as soon as she completed, Tori gates fell from out of nowhere. 2 gates fell on Shikaku's tail, then 3 large gates fell on the main body of Shikaku. With the Tori gates placed, Shikaku's all movements were instantly restricted. He couldn't even move, but that was not the end, as an extra-large structure of Tori gates kept forming that completely isolated Shikaku even inside this cave. Being suppressed instantly, Shikaku raged and tried whatnot, but Tsukihai paid him no mind. In fact, she completely ignored him and further observed Gaara's subconscious plane. Gaara's subconscious plane was indeed a mess, completely different from Naruto's, where large iron doors isolated Kurama. It seems that his psychological care has to be put to focus at first. I am going to kill you. This seal will not last permanently. I am going to break this and then I will take over his body. After that, I am going to kill you. Shikaku's roar. Tsukihai shook her hand, and said, yeah, go ahead and try all you can, but you won't even be able to put a single scratch on these torii gates. Even Kyubi is helpless in the face of these high-level, and you are just a measly Ichibi, the bijou with the least amount of chakra. However, it seemed that Tsukihai's words fell upon a deaf ear. Shikaku kept roaring and struggling but to no avail. However, those shouts have started to tick off Tsukihai. She snapped her fingers and suddenly chakra chains extended out of the several torii gates and entwined around Shikaku's mouth. These chakra chains seemed to be a combination of countless small torii gates joined together. With the chains entwined around Shikaku, he no longer had the freedom to even open his mouth, so the cave entered a silence. With everything returned to silence, Tsukihai sighed, like seriously, do you even know just how annoying you are? Now stay there quietly or else your state will only worsen, then more struggle you put, the more you will be restricted. Behave like the good giant dog you are, do your job that you are supposed to do, the job of being a chakra battery, and you will be allowed to exist, otherwise, only death awaits you. It seemed as if Tsukihai was casually speaking these words, but given the serious look in her eyes and the burning temperature in the cave, it did not feel as if she is simply joking. Honestly, Tsukihai was really surprised at just how annoying this tanuki is. At the same time she is really glad that her Ryumyaku is a good and honest dragon who mostly sleeps if he doesn't have to give out chakra. If Ryumyaku had been like Shikaku, then Kuroto would have always had a headache. After dealing with Shikaku, Tsukihai turned towards Gaara, who was shocked looking at everything happening before him. He honestly isn't himself. Overnight, his entire world has started to change, and whatever he believed has started to crumble. Ichibi, who is feared by all the people of Sunagakure, was called a pet. A battery? If that's not hilarious, then what is? The fact that Tsukihai so easily subdues Shikaku? Putting no mind to Gaara's shock, Tsukihai questioned, do you know how to become a perfect Jinchuriki? Gaara looked at Tsukihai with a complicated expression, then shook his head, no, I do not. Communication with the bijou and gaining his acceptance. These things are critical to becoming a perfect Jinchuriki. To perfectly use the chakra cloak, the Jinchuriki and the bijou must be in sync, a bond of trust with one another is necessary. Taking a pause, Tsukihai waited for Gaara to digest the information, then continued, treat them as monsters they will be monsters, treat them as friends they will be friends. I know it sounds too cliché, but it's the hardcore truth. But even with all that true, you must make them understand that you do not fear them, make them understand that you too are not someone to be looked down on. A bond of trust can only be formed when both parties understand and respect each other as equals. If one party has a too high evaluation of the other while the other party has a too low evaluation of the other, an equal bond will never form. So before becoming a perfect Jinchuriki, you must make him realize that you are no weakling. As Tsukihai said so, flames of Amenoshihomimi, Ashihomi for short, suddenly emerged in Tsukihai's hand. Gaara stared at the flickering golden flames on Tsukihai's hand, and for some reason, he felt instinctive danger from these flames. Tsukihai paid no mind to Gaara's change and continued, but that advice is for you, for me as well as most of the other people you will be meeting from here on. Bijou may be considered terrifying and forces of nature, but in our eyes, they are just batteries of chakra, and there is no need to fear batteries, right? But he is a sand demon. Gaara was puzzled. What Tsukihai said is completely different from what Sunagakure has taught him about Shikaku. In Sunagakure, Shikaku is considered the strongest weapon and their ultimate trump card. He is kept in Suna as a necessary evil, one that you do not want but need to maintain deterrence against other villages. That's actually wrong perception. Tsukihai shook her head with a smile. Their essence is chakra. For this reason, they are even immortal and will be eventually reborn even after their death. How about I tell you a secret that is known to very few people? These bijou are in reality pets of a certain Aji-chan, so I am not really making things up, but anyway, they are nothing more than batteries for me. As she said so, the flames of Ashihomi were suddenly shot towards the trapped Shikaku in the form of a fire fist. The attack is a copy of Portgas D. Ace's fire fist from the One Piece series. Under Tsukihai's control, the flames of Ashihomi completely engulfed Shikaku. His entire body was now full of golden fire. Boom. 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 Bijous are masses of chakra and the flames of Ashihomi literally burns chakra. As such, Tsukihai is the worst enemy for any bijou. Being burned by the flames of Ashihome, Shikaku's struggle became more violent, and he frantically tried to break free of the torii gates and escape but to no avail. Looking at the frantically struggling and crying Shikaku, Gaara for once had an incredible expression. After a while, Tsukihei turned around and squatted down to Gaara's eye level, then put both her and Gaara's shoulders and asked, "Do you see that? Shikaku is tied up, burning, he is even crying and struggling but still to no avail. Now tell me, is there any reason to be afraid of someone like him anymore?" The entire reason why Shikaku is being tortured is to completely wipe out the fear Gaara has of Shikaku. After if you are restricted by fear, then how can you grow? Fear is never a healthy motivation. Gaara looked at Tsukihei for a while, then at Shikaku's pathetic state, and for a moment he felt numbed. Tsukihei urged Gaara to walk forward and take a deep look at Shikaku, while she faintly spoke, "Look at that sight and burn it down in your memories. You have no need to be afraid of him, he can't do anything." After looking at Shikaku for a while, Gaara turned to look at Tsukihei and asked with an eager expression, Will I be able to do something like that in the future?" Tsukihei thought for a while as she tapped her finger on her chin, all the while Gaara looked at Tsukihei with a nervous expression. Looking at Gaara's nervous expression from the corner of her eye, Tsukihei chuckled, then spoke, "It depends on how much effort you are willing to put, although you wouldn't be able to do something like burning down Shikaku as your element is different, but if you truly try, you can definitely control the deserts, make sandstorms, and everything along the lines." Gaara may not have understood what that really means, and what extent the power here reaches, but for some reason, he had stars shining in his eyes. He asked with a more eager expression, Really? Can I really do something like that?" Tsukihei nodded. "Kuroto-sama brought you here because he recognizes your potential, so obviously he has expectations from you. If you train and work hard, then you will eventually be able to attain such levels of strength." Gaara turned back to look at the wailing and weak figure of Shikaku, the timidness and uneasiness within his eyes started to disappear, and the flames of determination started to burn within him as he muttered, "I will not let him down, I will make sure that he never feels disappointed in me or regrets saving me. I will become someone strong enough to control the deserts." This was the moment Gaara found himself a new purpose to live, and his eyes were no longer as empty as they were before. Tsukihei just smiled looking at Gaara's changes that were also slowly affecting his subconscious plane. This is only the first step to building up Gaara's psychological advantage over Shikaku. This will work, but for Shikaku to submit to him there is still a long way to go, and in that regard, Tsukihei's role is not much, it will all depend on Gaara's own fortitude and perseverance. However, even if that is the case, the gap in strength between the kid Gaara and Shikaku who has lived for nearly a millennia is too great. Therefore, Gaara's path of growth has to be designed for stable growth so that he doesn't become overwhelmed in the face of power. Otherwise, the psychological advantage he might have gained over Shikaku will become meaningless. "I suppose it is time to stop grilling the tanuki." Although Tsukihei thought so, she did not immediately stop. After being burned by the flames of Ashihome, Shikaku's struggle has gradually weakened. Although the golden flames of Ashihome are not as overbearing as the black flames of Amaterasu that represent the material world and light, the flames of Ashihome still have their advantage. Even if inferior, they have the special attribute of burning chakra, that is to say, as long as a chakra source is present they can continue to burn indefinitely. And what is a bijou? A bijou is nothing more than a large aggregate of chakra with consciousness. The point here is that they are nothing more than large aggregates of chakra. As such, once the golden flames are ignited the flames will continue to burn indefinitely the bijou. There is no need for Tsukihei to do any extra hard work, the chakra of Shikaku will keep the flames lit. Next, she waved her hand under the command of which the torii chains that entangled over Shikaku's mouth loosened, finally giving Shikaku some ability to speak. But it seemed that Tsukihei expected too much out of this annoying tanuki, even if he was weakened and crying that did not stop it from cursing and shouting, "Damn you Uchiha! I will not forget this, sooner or later I will." Tsukihei did not wait for Shikaku to finish, she added the ocular power of her eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to intensify the golden flames while coldly saying, "It seems that you have yet to learn your place." "Ah, damn it, hot." Immediately Shikaku's wailing and crying in pain intensified, the sounds echoed throughout the cave. While Shikaku cried, Tsukihei asked Gaara, "What do you think, isn't he just a pet, or better yet, he doesn't even have the qualifications to become a pet unless he becomes honest and learns his true place?" Gaara nodded nervously, but there was still excitement in his eyes. With Gaara's nod, Tsukihei smirked at Gaara and said to him to deliberately incite the tanuki, "You have to get used to this, do not fear him, if you fear something you will never be honest with him, treat the other party as what he is. Besides, such things will be common from now on." Gaara asked curiously, does that mean you are going to punish him like this all the time? Hearing Gaara's question, Shikaku's wailing stopped for a moment and he looked at Tsukihei, waiting for her answer, or rather her sentence for him. Tsukihei cackled upon noticing Shikaku's resentful glare focused on her, and she revealed with a mocking tone, I will let you know that these golden flames are called Ashihomi. I bet you have already noticed this, Shikaku, but these golden flames are not ordinary. They can continuously absorb and burn chakra, and you are a bijou. You are massive chakra, meaning they will continue to burn endlessly unless extinguished, be that a month, a year, a decade, half a century, or even millennia. And the good thing is that I have set them in such a manner that you will never run out of chakra, meaning you will continue to burn for all eternity. Of course, that's a bit of an exaggeration. Once he is freed of the Tori seals, Tsukihei believes that Shikaku will be able to extinguish them, but Shikaku doesn't know this. And since he doesn't know this, he suddenly started panicking and shouted, damn it, extinguish them immediately. Tsukihei's intimidation obviously took effect. Against someone who can subdue him so easily, Shikaku did not seem to be as strong or dangerous as Gaara had previously imagined. Tsukihei snorted coldly and said, is this the attitude to have when begging someone? Did no one teach you manners? Although Tsukihei has never been in Shikaku's place, she understands Shikaku's current state, and for some reason, it was giving her a unique pleasure, and she was really enjoying torturing Shikaku. She is also sure that Shikaku will soon give in. The only question is how long will he endure before finally submitting, and wag his tail like a good little dog. At this time, Shikaku said with an unwilling expression, "Well, Uchiha-san, you win, please just stop." Tsukihei said with an indifferent expression, "You seem to be begging the wrong person here." Realizing what Tsukihei meant, Shikaku's eyes widened, but they soon changed into angered. He was furious. What? You want me to beg this brat? He is nothing more than a mouse with a runny nose. He is not qualified. Succumbing to an Uchiha, who are the descendants of Rakuto Sennin, is barely acceptable to him. He knows that all the bijou, including the strongest Kyubi, are helpless in the face of the power of the Manjikyu Sharingan. But begging to the kid Gaara? This is completely unacceptable. Tsukihei folded her over her chest, then laughed. Ha ha ha, that's funny coming from you, because the last I checked you are the same in front of me. Nothing more than an annoying tanuki. You are not qualified to put forward your terms in front of me. Either submit or burn to eternity. Shikaku was bewildered by what the Uchiha girl said, and he tried to incite Tsukihei, kill the brat, become my Jinchuriki, you can have all of my chakra. Hearing Shikaku's words, Gaara looked at Tsukihei's face only to see her yawn in boredom. Don't you have anything else to say? Anyway, I have no interest in acquiring your chakra. Shikaku looked at Tsukihei with a more shocked expression. You. Tsukihei interrupted Shikaku midway. Decide fast, I don't have much time to waste on you. There are more important that I have to do rather than looking at your pathetic state. If you don't hurry, then I will leave you as is. After a pause, Tsukihei said coldly, and once gone, who knows after how much time will I come back, so be fast, you only have 10 seconds before I take my leave. Shikaku was now caught in entanglement. Being burned for days and more is really unbearable, but begging a brat is also unacceptable to him. 8. 7. Shikaku tried to speak something but suddenly stopped. 6. 3. 2. 1. Please wait. Before Tsukihei could count down the last digit, Gaara suddenly interrupted. Tsukihei stopped and looked at Gaara with a curious expression. She was interested in what Gaara had to say. Please wait. Speaking so, Gaara started walking towards Shikaku, and spoke, Shikaku. I am no longer afraid of you, and I also understand that you do not want to accept me now because I am too weak. It's fine if you do not want to with the way I am currently, but I promise Shikaku, I will work hard and train, and finally gain your recognition. If one day, I personally defeat you, and also free you of all the cages, will you recognize me? Will you help me then? Will you agree to lend me your strength then? That's a surprise, but I suppose that's to be expected of the next Kazekage, and the best Kazekage. Tsukihei was a little surprised by Gaara's sudden actions, but not much considering Gaara's character. Shikaku was also surprised by Gaara's sudden action, and he was silent for a while. Afterward, he snorted, don't overestimate yourself, brat. Gaara did not back down, and continued, answer my question, Shikaku. Whether it really happens or not is another matter altogether, but if it really happens, will you approve me to be your Jinchuriki or not? Shikaku was again surprised, and he suddenly laughed. Ha ha ha, you will never become strong enough, but I suppose that there is no problem in agreeing with you. At least I will be able to watch you fail miserably. Gaara said, it won't happen. I will not fail. Shikaku finally sighed, and said, and what happens if you fail? Gaara thought a little and said, I will not fail, but if I do fail to gain your approval by defeating you within the next decade, I will do anything that you ask of me. I will do everything that you want, even if it means death and more. Shikaku was silent, he couldn't sense any trace of deception or lie in the brat's words. As such, he finally nodded after a long silence, fine, if such a day ever comes, then I will give all my strength to you. I will give you access to my entire chakra, but do not forget your condition, kid, you only have as much as a decade as you said, anything more and you will fail. With Shikaku's nod, Gaara turned to look at Tsukihei and said, Tsukihei-san, please extinguish the flames. Tsukihei hummed, since the kid is asking so I am forgiving you, but do not try to step out of your bounds. If I as much as hear that you are acting out of your bounds there will be no next chance, being burned to the eternity will await you. Shikaku was silent, he did not give any reply, but his eyes showed agreement to Tsukihei's words. Satisfied that her point is clear to Shikaku, Tsukihei extinguished the flames. As soon as the flames were extinguished, Shikaku's burned-up state became visible, and he finally collapsed to unconsciousness. Tsukihei did not care, she just said to Gaara, come on, let's go Gaara-kun. Gaara nodded, then started walking towards Tsukihei, and then walked towards the exit of the cave. While walking out, he took one final glance at Shikaku then left. After coming out of the cave, Tsukihei spent some more time in Gaara's subconscious plane. Kuroto is already quite familiar with many subconscious planes. The last subconscious plane that Kuroto went into was of Pakura where he entered using Tenseigan, but that's a story of another time. What's important here is that due to her familiarity with many subconscious planes, she has learned to develop an understanding of the state mind of a person based on their subconscious plane, and as such, she studied Gaara's subconscious plane to design a proper healing course. Finally, after determining everything, she and Gaara left his subconscious plane. Recovering back to their senses, the first thing Gaara did was to bow towards Tsukihei, thank you for everything that you have done for me. Tsukihei said, it's fine Gaara-kun since you will be becoming a part of us, doing the bare minimum is obvious. Gaara nodded, he was still more than grateful. At this time, the gate of the room opened and Sandame Kazekage puppet walked in. With his arrival, Tsukihei said, alright Gaara-kun, I have some things to do so I will be leaving, while I or Kuroto-sama are gone, he will be your caretaker. Kazekage puppet bowed to Gaara. Gaara also bowed lightly. Suki said, you can ask him anything you are doubtful about, and I think he should be able to answer most of your doubts. He is also the guard of this air fortress, so you do not have to worry about safety, while you are free to roam around the entire fortress. Zone D is an exception to it, that area is off limits. So, do not go there, understand? Gaara nodded as he curiously looked at the newly arrived person who for some reason reminded him of someone. It's just that he has been unable to figure out who that really is. Tsukihei continued, also, your basic training will start soon enough, so rest easy so that we can begin your training plans soon. Gaara again nodded. After that Tsukihei explained a few more things to Gaara, then soon left the kid in Kazekage puppet's care. The reason for not immediately starting his training is that she wants to give the kid some time for himself to process the sudden changes and accept that he is no longer in Sunagakure, along with many other things as these are all necessary. After leaving the room, Tsukihei walked back to her lab. After transferring back her soul to the main body, Kuroto walked towards the exit of Anchor Vantion, and muttered, since I have taken Gaara under my wing, and since there is a need of a friend for him, so I suppose it's time that I also bring myself an assistant who can help me in all sorts of experiments. But the important matter is potential. Kuroto honestly doesn't have much time to search people, and most of the kids who have the potential are either part of some shinobi village or have already been taken in by Orochimaru. At this point, Kuroto can only think of one person who might not have been taken in by Orochimaru yet, and that one person might even become useful in many of Kuroto's upcoming plans and can be a good lab assistant if taught carefully. Kuroto has obviously been planning to cultivate loyal subordinates for quite some time. If you want to run an entire organization like Amatsukami, then a lot of members are required. After all, the shinobi world is too big, and Kuroto alone cannot do all things alone. And Kuroto's clones alone won't cut out for it. After all, Kuroto has to be the one controlling them. But now it seems that now things have started to come along. There are Shinichi, Shursui, Itachi, Pakura, Sandame Kazekage puppet, and he himself too, but that is still too less. After all, there are still many things that they cannot do. Well anyway, with Gaara and the next person he is going after, more things will become somewhat easy for Kuroto. To be honest, Kuroto really respects his sensei Orochimaru in this regard, whatever kind of person he may be, but when it comes to finding loyal subordinates who would do anything regardless of how cruel or morally wrong it may be, Orochimaru is a master. Most of his subordinates were exceptionally loyal to him, whether they were the Sound Four, Kimimaro, Kabuto, or any other subordinate. In fact, even Mizuki is loyal to Orochimaru. Even when Orochimaru's hand was sealed by Sandim-sama, and Orochimaru was greatly weakened, they did not betray him. In fact, Kabuto was constantly present by Orochimaru's side. Considering this, and many other feats of Orochimaru, it wouldn't even be wrong to say that other than the times when Orochimaru went after the bodies of Uchiha, Orochimaru seldom stumbled in his life. In comparison to Orochimaru, the majestic Uchiha Madara is a complete loser in this regard. Except for his younger brother Uchiha Izuna, Madara never had the true loyalty of any subordinate. Even after his disagreement with the Shodame Hokage, when Uchiha Madara chose to leave Konoha, none of the Uchiha chose to follow the patriarch. Even later when he attempted to create Kurozetsu, he was fooled by Kurozetsu into believing that Kurozetsu is his creation, and not even a single one of the Shirozetsu was loyal to him either. Even Obito, to whom he had planned to leave as a subordinate to keep watch over Nagato, also betrayed him. Nagato himself was never informed of anything, but that doesn't matter anyway. Overall, all of Uchiha Madara's arrangements of coming back to life in his prime actually turned into nothing more than a joke. If it was not for Kabuto, this unexpected person to suddenly appear with Uchiha Madara's Edo Tensei, then things would have been too different. And how did Kabuto even obtain Uchiha Madara's cells for Edo Tensei? Obviously, because of Kurozetsu's lead, who wanted Madara to be the Jinchuriki of Jubi to revive Kagaya with Madara as the sacrifice. If not for his usefulness for reviving Kagaya, Madara may have never even gotten the chance to return to the shinobi world after he had ventured into the afterlife. The experiences of both Orochimaru and Madara are a lesson for Kuroto. From Orochimaru, Kuroto has learned how to cultivate a loyal subordinate, and from Madara, Kuroto has learned what not to do in order to not dig his own grave. Well, anyway, after coming out of the flying fortress, Kuroto used the Tenseigan chakra mode to go towards the land of grass, and specifically to Kyuzugakur in the land of grass. Since Kuroto has made up his mind, so he will obviously act on it as soon as he can. To train powerful shinobi, proper training from a young age is very essential. All villages do so, and Konoha is no exception to this, with most of the children entering into the academy by the age of 8 years in the times of peace. Of course, war times are another matter altogether, and then there are also other exceptions like Namikaze Minato, Hatake Kakashi, Uchiha Itachi. But the official training as a shinobi can be commenced a few years earlier. Gaara is at the right age for the start of his training, but the kid's temperament is still not right, as he is more of a silent type. Having a friend or two who are opposite to his character will not only improve his temperament, but it will also induce a competitive spirit. Therefore, Kuroto's goal this time is Uzumaki Karen, who was one of the 3 last known descendants of the Uzumaki clan. Actually, 5 if you count Senju Tsunade's quarter Uzumaki lineage. But anyway, Uzumaki Karen not only has the lineage of the Uzumaki clan but also a cheerful personality. Overall, she could have been a pretty strong kunoichi in the original story. As a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, Karen's talent is unquestionable. Even if she did not receive any formal education as a kunoichi from a young age that should have been given to an Uzumaki, and even under the extremely harsh growth environment where she was repeatedly abused of her ability to heal others, she was still pretty decent where she could use few of the most dangerous techniques like chakra suppression technique, adamant and attacking chains, heel bite, mind's eye of Kagura, chakra transfer technique. All these techniques show that Uzumaki Karen's talent is incredible, it's just that she never got the chance to bloom unlike the other Uzumakis of that time. Heck, she could have been the best medical nin had she received Senju Tsunade's teachings. So, with all that said, Kuroto finds her to be very useful, and she might even be able to become Kuroto's lab assistant, the same way Kabuto is to Orochimaru. After all, it would be a waste to let such an unpolished diamond remain buried. As such, Kuroto has come to Kyuzugakur. In fact, Kuroto is also very eager to witness Karen's growth. He wonders what level of strength Karen can achieve in the future under his tutelage. This is obviously not the first time he has come to Kyuzugakur, but this time the state of the village seemed a little different. After disguising himself as a common citizen, Kuroto strolled through the streets of Kyuzugakur. Having been to Sunagakur only a few days ago, Kuroto can clearly recognize that Kyuzugakur seemed to be more lively than Sunagakur. Especially the Mission Commission Center, shinobi were continuously coming and going to the Mission Commission Center. Driven by curiosity, Kuroto observed the Mission Commission Center and soon found out the reason for such a high number of commissions. The fees of each commission are significantly lower compared to what fees Konoha as well as other great shinobi villages charge. In fact, it is as low as 1/4 of the average fees Konoha charges from its clients. Low price to remain in business, huh? After getting the answer, Kuroto was no longer interested. In the shinobi world, if a small village like Kyuzugakur wants to survive, then lowering their commission fees is the only option they have. But it must never be forgotten that shinobis are not machines. Once injured, they too require time to recover. Raising new shinobi alone takes up a lot of time. Therefore, Kyuzugakur may be able to compete against great villages with such low fees for some time, but it will never last for too long. After all, compared to great shinobi villages, villages like Kyuzugakur lacks the necessary foundation as well as top-level combat powers. Well, anyway, after taking his stroll around Kyuzugakur, Kuroto activated his Byakugan and soon noticed several chakra signatures that were distinct and powerful, at the level that a Jonin has. But two specific chakra signatures caught his attention. Both of them seemed very similar and reminded Kuroto of that distinct Uzumaki chakra. Out of these two, one of the chakra was somewhat less, but it was brimming with vitality, while the other was not the same. It was losing all its vitality, and was on the verge of extinguishing. It seemed very close to death. Following the direction of this particular chakra source, Kuroto soon reached a dilapidated hut at one of the corners of the village. Around the same time, Kuroto arrived near the hut. A shinobi that was dressed in the Kyuzugakur's combat uniform gone, and a bandage wrapped around his hand, walked outside with an annoyed look. The effect seems to be worsening day by day. All my injuries haven't even recovered even after I took so many bites. What a waste.